let's jump right into the capital budgeting model and build it from soup to nuts. I'm going to start with some column labels all the way down here in row 21 to save us room to add some stuff later. But the first couple of labels I want are for the year and for the capital expenditures. Then when I get to the quantity of units, I want to hit Alt-Enter to give me a second line on that. Second row, let that text wraps, quantity of units. And then when I hit the Tab key, notice that Excel widened that row for me. I want to select that whole row with the Shift space and come up here and I want to align that to the top, so I like to do Alt-H-A-T, or you could just click that button. And now I'm ready to go to my next label, which for me is going to be per unit, Alt-Enter price. From those things, I should be able to calculate revenue. Then I can add my per unit, Alt-Enter operating expenses, my variable, Alt-Enter operating expenses, my fixed, Alt-Enter operating expenses, and from that calculate a total, Alt-Enter operating expenses. I'm going to go ahead and add some more labels without talking you through it, just to save some time. And you may have noticed that I had this row highlighted. There was absolutely no reason to do that. I just had it highlighted to align everything earlier. What I do want to come back and do is adjust the width on some of these. And while that row is highlighted, or if it weren't, I could do a Control space, a Shift space, and do Alt-HAC, and that would hit this button up here to center everything within the cell. I think one more thing I might like to do is do an Alt-HBA to put borders around all of those cells. And I'm going to put a border around this. It's going to be Alt-HB. Let's see, what's the one for just the outside borders? S. And within that, I'm going to type capital budgeting model. And I want to center all that across the selection. I'm going to hit Control 1, which is going to bring up this little key right here. Control 1. Go to the Alignment tab with my right arrow, hit Alt-H to go to horizontal, and then the down arrow to hit Center Across Selection. You may have merged cells. There's even a Merge and Center button on the toolbar, but it makes it very difficult to insert columns later. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to hit Control B to bold that one. And then I wanted to come back and bold some of the more important items here. Revenue, total OPEX, EBITDA, which is just revenue minus expenses, or better yet, let's call it revenue minus OPEX. And earnings before taxes, which we could also call taxable income, and earnings. And what I'm going to call unleveraged after-tax cash flow. We could call it just after-tax cash flow right now because we don't have any leverage, but I'm going to save that for later. And let me go ahead and hit my F2 key to edit, and watch when I hit enter, it fixes the height of that cell again. When I bolded it, it made it a little bit wide. Okay, so now let's build out this model. I'm going to start down here in row 27 for a reason that I'll tell you later, and hit 0, 1. And I'd like to build this thing out for about 10 years. So get to the 10 there, scroll back up, and in that first year, or the 0th year, times 0, I am going to say equal to negative, and grab my total CapEx amount up there. That's the only investment I'm going to have at this point. But then by the end of that first year, I will have sold some number of units. I'm going to hit F4 on that so I can copy it down. So let me get my 10 rows, Control D. So I don't know what I'm selling, widgets or ice cream cones or something, but I'm going to sell 200 of them per year. And then I'd also like to specify a per unit price of 4. You double click on that, it's another way to get it down. I would like to calculate the revenue. It's going to be equal to quantity times price. And if I've got those cells highlighted, I can just hit Control Enter and copy that down in that way. Or per unit OPEX, similarly, I could highlight all those cells and say equals, go up there and get my per unit OPEX of $25. Now I need to hit the F4 key if I'm going to do it this way, but I can then hit Control Enter. And then my variable OPEX. So if I know the units and the per unit OPEX, I can calculate that as well. Probably should have made this one negative, so I'm going to edit that cell, make it negative, and do a Control Enter to fix them all at once. Then I'm going to show that variable OPEX as an outflow. My fixed OPEX, but you'd like it if I just zoom so I don't have to keep scrolling back. There we go. My fixed OPEX is going to be a negative of what's in cell G5. So I can copy that down, but first I'm just going to go ahead and calculate the total OPEX, which is going to be the variable plus the fixed. And while I'm at it, I'll just say that EBITDA is going to be the revenue minus, or in my case, plus the total OPEX. I could then calculate all 3 of these, select all 3 of these, double click, bring them down. Obviously I left off a $sign. Let's see where. Let's see. And G5 is one place. So I hit F4, tab, check this one. That one looks good. Check this one. That one looks good. And I'll do a Control D to copy all those down correctly. Next, I need to calculate my DD&A. And right now I'm saying we're doing this on a 5-year straight line. I'm going to show you something that makes absolutely no sense, and then we'll come back and find out why it should make sense. I'm going to list the number of years in my depreciation schedule backward, and then I'm going to fill those with the amount of depreciation each year. We won't always use a straight line, so we could fill those in with makers, factors, and so forth. Then to calculate the depreciation, I would like to use the sum product of these 5 cells, comma, these 5 cells, absolute. Makes no sense whatsoever right now, but think about it. If I'm multiplying this by this, then I'm going to get a whole bunch of zeros plus 10,000 times the 0.2. When I copy that down one, I'm going to get 4 zeros plus 10,000 times the 0.2 plus another 0 times 10,000, or times the 0.2. If I copy that down, look what happens. By the time I get down here, I'm multiplying a lot of blank cells by some factors, so I get 0. So after this amount is fully depreciated, I can use the same column in the same formula in the whole column, but after that amount is fully depreciated, then my DD&A goes to 0. So when we populate that with the makers, it'll work great. Another thing we could do is come in here and spend another 10,000. And look at that, we get depreciation on the first investment for 3 years, both investments for 2 years, the last investment for the remaining 3 years, and then they go away. So this idea of using sum product in this way is a very elegant way to do DD&A. What it requires is some blank cells up here for as many years as we're going to need factors. And then of course it requires to put the depreciation schedule in over here. Let me clean this up a little bit by deleting this one. And I'm going to select these cells, do a copy, and I'm going to do a paste special, Alt-ES-V, or actually it's Alt-ES, or you can go up to File and Paste Special. And all I want to paste is the formats. So Say okay to that. Then my taxable income is just going to be the EBITDA plus the Ddna for now. Copy that down, Control V. And after we get the asset fully depreciated, our taxable income goes up. So things are working correctly. To find our income taxes, it's going to be the negative of that taxable income times the income tax rate, the absolute values, and then our net income is going to be taxable income plus that negative taxes that we paid. Copy, Alt-ST for format. I'll go ahead and do a Control D to get that down. And then our after-tax cash flow, it's going to be the net earnings. We're going to add back, which in my case means minus the Ddna. And then we are going to make this formula so I can copy it up a row as well. So I'm going to add in that negative CapEx. So if I had CapEx in future years, then it would pick it up. If I wanted to copy that up here, it would pick up the negative 10,000. At this point, I can just go ahead and copy that formula. I'll start at the top. I could take either one of those, copy it all the way down that column. And we have now completed our basic capital budgeting model. I have included depreciation of our capital investment because capital implies that we should. What we've not done yet is looked at any kind of a leverage, any kind of a loan for this model, or changing our depreciation schedules or tracking our book value or anything like that. So before I move to the next video to do that, I'd first like to just put in a formula text for you here. Should have done that at the beginning. Let me see. I'll put them all on row 28. But then I'm going to come back and change this right here. In fact, I'm just going to copy that up one to indicate to you that that one is looking a row higher than the rest of these are. Then let me do an Alt-Hoy on that to make sure that you can see all of those things. I'll come back later and reduce this column, but for now I wanted you to be able to see that formula in there. And one final thing I think we should do before we leave this is get the answer. So if we care about our net present value and our rate of return, then we'll need, of course, a discount rate for net present value. Use 10%. NPV is going to be this first cash flow. We don't want to discount that one. Plus the NPV at 10% of all the subsequent cash flows. That is the amount of wealth that we created. And then here we're pretty confident we're only going to have one rate of return, so I'm not too worried about a guess. I'm going to put it in this way. So those are our outputs. And with these assumptions up here, we have got a stellar project at over 30% rate of return, creating over $11 million, if these are in thousands. See you in the next video.